Hi there. Wanted to do a recap of the group support meeting we had last night. It was a really great meeting. For those who were unable to attend, this will be kind of a brief recap. We'll go over some of the slides, some of the information we shared, and I'll give some links below so that you can access some of the handouts that we gave to the patients that were there. At the meeting itself, went over a number of things. Did some introductions, some clinic housekeeping. You'll see all these as we kind of go through the slides, so I won't read them all here. But we always do an icebreaker. It's really great for the people in the room to get a chance to meet everybody else. We always take a chance to do kind of a little icebreaker so that we get to know each other a little bit better. This month's icebreaker was, have you ever met someone famous? If so, what happened? Or if not, was there any small, kind of non-scale victories or something along those lines? In my case, one of the famous people that I've met was Bill Gates. Kind of shared my experience in meeting him. Happened to work for him at the time, probably 5 or 6 layers deep in the organization. But the thing that kind of stood out when I met Bill was he's actually a lot shorter than I thought he was going to be. He was kind of my eye to eye. I'm 5'7". Up to when I had first met him, I'd only ever seen him in kind of like a conference up on a big screen or something along those lines. So in my mind, he was just very tall, but in reality, he was kind of normal. But going around the room, heard some interesting stories of different people that they'd met, and so it was kind of fun all around. As far as clinic housekeeping goes, it was a reminder to everybody and to you watching the video right now. Now through kind of the end of May, we have the patient clothing exchange going on at the Puyallup Clinic. There is a ton of clothing for men and women in just about every size you can imagine. As people are losing their weight, they're going through different sizes of clothing, and people don't necessarily want to just buy some clothes for their current size knowing that they're going to lose another 10, 20, 30 pounds. Other patients who've grown out of their clothes have given them up, kind of their loss in pounds is somebody else's gain in clothes. And so we have a large assortment. Please come by the Puyallup Clinic anytime you want. Grab as many clothes as you want, because this is really a way to help our patients out. This is the 3rd time we've done it. Patients love it. We have a number of things that are, brand new, still have tags attached, where, people bought some stuff, lost 20, 30 pounds, like, oh my God, I didn't even get a chance to wear it. Somebody else can benefit, so that's great. This April right now, we're also celebrating our 2nd anniversary. It's been a long journey. We now have both clinics, 2 clinics. We've helped over 1,100 patients in the last 2 years. Really appreciate you being part of it and giving us the chance to be able to help you out. So thank you for that. The third thing is, if you haven't updated your BMR sheet, your base metabolic rate sheet, in at least 90 days, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, next time you come in, or you can even text us, ask the front desk staff for an updated BMR sheet. In a few minutes, we'll talk about what those are and why they're important. But this is just kind of a reminder. We like to get those updated for people about every 90 days because the information changes. Fourth thing on kind of the housekeeping is for people doing body scans, reminder, StyleQ has an app now. So go to the Google Play Store or the App Store for the iPhone. It's called StyleQ. Download it. As soon as you enter in your email, you get access to every one of the scans that you've ever done. No more just looking at printed out PDFs. And you actually get access to a lot more information than you did get to see on the paper printouts. So go ahead and grab one of those. Highly useful. And last thing is, at the start of the year, we made out some clinic resolutions. We'll do a quick check-in on how we're doing with that. But as far as BMR goes, what is it? So what the BMR is if you were to sit in bed for just 24 hours and not move a muscle, it's how many calories does your body need to support your life. It's different for everybody because, your age, your weight, your height, whether you're male or female, matters for it. But what we like is for patients to get about 20 to 25% below that number to be in an optimal calorie intake for losing weight. If you get 40% or below, your body actually is going to stop losing weight. It thinks it's in in survival mode, that something's really wrong. And after 1,000, 1,100 patients, we've seen this to be the #1 reason that people hit plateaus or stalls. They're just under eating, and trying to convince people at times that they need to eat more to start losing weight is sometimes a challenge. I feel like it's half the battle that we deal with. So what does it look like? Here we will print out the sheets for you if you want, or you can go calculate it yourself. There's a link here on the website, tdeecalculator.net. You can compute your BMR. But when we give you the sheet, what it will show you is, there's a calorie range. So this one that we're listing here, BMR of 1973, that happens to be mine. And so for me to be losing weight, it would be great if I could be in that, that 15 to 1700 calorie range. anytime I start eating about 1,400 calories or less, first my metabolism slows down. When I get below 1,200, I start to stall. And if I ever eat below 1,000, it's just, I'm in starvation mode and I'm not going to lose any weight at all. My body will actually chew up some of its muscle before it will let go of fat, because from a biological point of view, fat is the thing that your body will preserve the most to actually keep you alive. And so that's not a good thing. And this does happen to some of our patients where they'll get up in the morning, they're not very hungry, especially as the dosage goes up. They'll skip breakfast, they get kind of busy at work, don't even realize that they miss lunch. And then they get home at night like, oh, okay, I got to eat a whole day's worth of food. When you're on the medicine, it's hard to do that because your portion sizes get smaller. And so they go to bed eating maybe, at the most 800 or 900 calories. And because you're not really that hungry, your appetite's really suppressed. You don't really think much of that. But you do that a couple of days in a row, a week or two in a row, and your weight loss will stop. And the first reaction from a lot of people is, hey, give me more medicine. And that's actually the opposite of what we want to happen, because you're not eating enough. Giving you more medicine is just going to make it worse. And so when we talk to patients about, well, you might want to scale back your medicine, that gets really emotional and people don't want to do that. But so, we're always working to make sure people understand what their BMR is, where they're at, and making sure that we can do it the right way. So what I wanted to do was show you an example of what we recently did with one patient and go through her situation, because she was in a stall, a little bit frustrated, and so we took first step was looking at our BMR. In her case, her BMR is 2175. And so what we had her do was, for an entire week, she wasn't really into tracking on a food app, but we had her just literally write down in a food diary what she ate. And what we were able to do was take that information and, go through and figure out what we call her macronutrients. What is the number of calories, protein, carbs, fat, fiber, and things like that. And went through line by line and figured everything out. And if we go back and we look at our BMR, kind of that optimal range for her to be losing weight but still be in kind of a calorie deficit is in this, kind of 1,500 to 1,750 range. When we look at her actual calorie count, we can see on a daily, over the week, she averaged 1,400, which is below where she needs to be. But on some days, it was as low as, less than 1,000, two of them kind of in that 1,000 range. The other thing that we noted was, our goal is for patients to get at least 100 grams of protein a day, and she's averaging 67. So there's definitely two opportunities that we need to work on with her to get her protein levels up, but also get her, eating, on average, 200-300 calories more a day in order for her to be in this right range. But this is, something that we've done a number of times with patients. It's a bit of work for us to go through and break all this down to get the information, but we do that, and that's one of the, the values of coming to a clinic like ours. We put in this extra work because we want our patients to be successful. The medicine is a tool, it's not magic, and your bodies are always changing. That's why we say we want you to get your updated BMR at least every 90 days. So let's go back to the slides. Now how are we doing on our 2026 resolutions? At the start of the year, we kind of had three goals. The first one was we wanted 50% of our patients doing STAT-Q scans. We found, and we now provide information in whenever you take medicine home, that especially in the first 90 days, patients who do scans tend to lose about 15% more weight than our patients who don't. And that's because the scans are great tools for us to be able to fine-tune your medicine or talk to you about protein, talk to you about, water. It gives us a wealth of information besides just, hey, how are you doing? And those people that take advantage of them do much better. And so far this year, we're averaging about 65% of the new patients are doing their scans. It's a free service. Other places charge money to do these scans. This is included in your package. Please take advantage of it. Second thing is we have a goal of making sure that 100% of patients have a before pick. We're now through year 2, entering into year 3, and I'm so embarrassed that the first year we were so terrible about getting people starting picks. It's when people get to their goal weight and we can show them their before and after, it's transformational. It's sometimes emotional for people, and when we don't have it, it's just missing out on a lot. And so right now we're averaging about 92% of new patients, but if we didn't get a starting pick for you, if you happen to have one of your own prior to starting the medicine, please let us know. We'd like to get it into your charts so that we can see the difference in you and you can see the difference in yourself. And the last one is we just want to make sure that every patient is tracking water and protein. And while we have no good way of measuring this, we do ask you these questions when you check in, pick up medicine, or you come in for your shots. And we feel like most patients are doing this, mostly because we're so persistent in asking about it. But water and protein are kind of the two biggest things that make a difference for patients who do really, really well and our patients who do just kind of okay. And so pay attention to those. Okay, we always do a segment in the group meetings, kind of what are the latest GLP-1 news. Down below, there'll be a link to our website that has a pointer to each one of these articles that we handed out. I'll just kind of give you a quick preview of them now, but it's people on GLP-1 medications usually do it for weight loss. But research is showing more and more health benefits beyond just the weight loss, whether it's for your mental issues, whether it's for your heart health, protecting the brain from Alzheimer's or dementia. There's a bunch of interesting research that's going out. And one of the things that I'm kind of a research geek, I go out, I find this information, I summarize it, and I present it in a way that patients can kind of understand it. It'll only take a minute or two to read versus, an hour to go through a 40-page paper. But I'll show you an example of what some of those look like. Again, the link's down below. Here was the first one. GLP-1 medications are being found to, help in other ways, especially mental health. So reduction in depression, anxiety. We talk about it in the consults, but substance use risk, goes down significantly when people are on this medication. So kind of a summary of what they found. And, we always provide links to the original research, if you want to be kind of a research geek like me and kind of go deep into it. But a lot of improvements in overall mental health issues when people are on these medications. The second one, about heart health, there's a lot of studies showing improvements in risk to heart attack and strokes for people that are on these medications. Heart disease is probably, actually, it's called out here, is the #1 cause of death in the United States. And so seeing a, 18, 20% reduction in those kind of things, really important to know when you're on this medication. It's not just losing weight, it's actually improving your risk of some, deadly consequences. Third thing is, the medicine itself has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. And what they're finding is, because of that, inflammation relief to the brain especially is improving, across a couple of different areas. Dementia risk, down over a third, stroke risk down almost 20%. These are real impactful ways that your body's improving. You're reducing risk of, bad things happening to you when you're on the medication besides just losing weight. So we like to call that out. And the fourth article we shared, we've had a number of patients in the last few months ask us about retatrutide. And if you haven't heard about it, let me take just 30 seconds and explain it. Semaglutide was kind of the first generation of the GLP medication, and it works on one hormone receptor, the GLP-1. When tirzepatide came out, it was considered second generation. It works on two hormones, the GLP-1 and the GIP. There's a new medication in trial testing. It's called retatrutide, and it's third generation. And guess what? It works on three hormones, the GLP-1, the GIP, and a hormone called glucagon. It's not through trial testing. It's not been FDA approved, but there are some online places that are selling what they call retatrutide. No licensed doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant would ever prescribe this, because they would not prescribe medication that's FDA approved. They haven't completed trials, so they don't know what the dosing is. They don't have, complete understanding of what the side effects will be. But these online places are somehow sourcing something, it's usually out of China, that is called retatrutide, and people are taking it. They're taking it without an actual prescription, without any oversight or anything like that. And so we provide this to you guys as just a warning. If you see this, don't ask us for it because it's not approved. Dr. Bridget wouldn't go near it with a 20-foot pole. Just be careful, be safe. What you can get online is varied and wild, but we don't want to see any of our patients, kind of go down this path and possibly harm themselves. The last thing that we talked about was, in the last 4 or 5 months, beginning of January, a pill form of semaglutide came out. It's called oral Wegovy. And while it is successful for some people, what we're finding and what the research shows is people that take the pill, while it's not quite as effective as the injections, the protocol that you need to use to take it is extremely, extremely rigid. And because it's oral, you require almost, 10 times the amount of medicine that goes in your body to make it effective to reach your bloodstream. When you take a pill, a lot of it gets filtered out of your stomach, a lot of it gets filtered out of your liver. And so by the time it actually gets to your blood, it's really diluted. And so in the case of, somebody getting an injection, which might be, 100 units of us, which is about 2.5 milligrams, they would take in 25 milligrams of the medicine on the pill. And the other thing is, it's very strict. You have to wait 6 hours of not having anything to eat before you take the pill. You have to take it with exactly 4 ounces of water. Any more water than that, any less, dilutes the amount of medication. If you are going to be hit by side effects, you get hit by them daily because every day you're taking new medication. And what they found was, during trial testing, almost 60% of the people that were in the trial testing quit. And they quit because it was such a rigid standard in order to take the pill that they just couldn't maintain it. And so we are not going to jump into the pill world. The injections are so much more consistent. The rate of weight loss is so much better that we're just going to stay with the injections. Okay, let's jump back to the slides. So the two main guided topics that we talked about, the first one was meal planning. A lot of times people have trouble figuring out what they're going to eat. And if you're, at the end of the day, tired, exhausted, then trying to decide what to eat, sometimes we make some bad decisions. And so a lot of people are doing this. For those who attended the meeting, Jen did a great job of giving out some meal planning kits. There was food choppers in there, and there was, containers and a bunch of other things to help you get started. Again, another reason to come to the meetings in person. We always give away great gifts. But meal planning doesn't have to be complicated. Consuming few small habits, kind of go a long way. And while you first do it, and you feel like, oh my God, this is taking an hour or two to get through. What you realize is the amount of time you save over the week, is amazing compared to the small amount of time that you might put in on the weekend. But there are a couple benefits. One of them is you choose to eat healthier. Like I said, picking out on the weekend what you're going to eat for the week, planning it, making it, versus doing it when you're late at night hungry on a Wednesday evening, you tend to make better choices. Or you don't, pull up DoorDash or go through that drive-through when you really should. Second thing is, you reduce waste. When you meal plan and you portion it out, you tend to do what you're going to consume. And when you're on the medication, you consume less. You go out to eat or you order, something for delivery, it's a huge amount. And even if you try to use it for some of the leftovers, a lot of times we end up throwing a lot of it away. At the end of the day, pre-planning your meals, making these kits yourself, you tend to save money. Jen put a note in here that, she uses Safeway app every trip, and we do save money that way. And it does save you time in the long run. And so the other thing is, if you have an air fryer or slow cooker or something like that, it makes things go a lot easier. Jen loves the crock pot. We can make a lot of meals out of that. Usually our dinners that we make them just a little bit bigger than what we can eat, and we use them as lunch the next day. My lunch is always last night's dinner. Pinterest and ChatGPT and others, lots of ways to get good recipes, good meal plans, and how to do it. And you all have different schedules, and so not everybody's 9 to 5. Some people work graveyard in the middle of the night, and so meal plan around what works best for you. It is definitely a way, and we had people in the room talk about that do this, that it's really changed their approach, and so super helpful. We encourage people to do that. The last thing is, and this is what a lot of people actually came to the meeting for, was our discussion on pushing through plateaus. What do you do when the scale stops moving? We have kind of a playbook that we run through now after going through 1,000+ patients and seeing people hit this. A lot of times when you're online and you tell your online provider that, hey, I'm not losing weight, their first and only reaction that they do is like, well, up here, in a lot of ways, that's the last thing you want to do. And we kind of walk you through what we do. And I mentioned this earlier, but the number one reason that we find people hitting plateaus is they're just not eating enough. That appetite suppression is so strong. And as we saw in the example with that patient's BMR and her eating diary, they weren't getting enough calories. And so you get 30-40% below that BMR level, and your body will just hold on to the fat. It won't let it go. Second reason a lot of times people see the scale start to slow down or stop is as your body gets smaller, you require fewer calories. That's why we recommend updating the BMR every 90 days, because your body's changing. The other part of that is sometimes your metabolism needs to catch up to the new you. You lose 20, 30, 40 pounds, your body needs to behave differently. And so sometimes it takes a few weeks, a month or so. In some cases, I had a 90-day stall at one point. I was doing everything right, calories in the right range, activity. My body was just hitting kind of a previous set point of where it liked to be, and it took a while just to kind of get through that. For some people, especially those that aren't doing body scans as frequently, they lose some muscle. And when you lose muscle burns up a lot more calories than fat. And so if you're losing muscle, you have a higher risk of being in a stall. And so that's one of the reasons that we really emphasize protein, doing your body scans, and making sure that we maintain your muscle mass. Fourth one is, and this generates a lot of conversation in the room, is sometimes there's hidden calories. I often talk to people like, hey, how was your week? Oh, I'm in a stall. Like, tell me about what you ate. And they'll talk about it. And then when they describe what they eat, in my mind, I've got a picture of a certain amount of calories, but then we have them do an actual food diary and they document every single thing. We find tons of places that there's hidden calories. One of the examples is, the coffee creamer that goes in people's coffees. Those are sugar and calories. Sauces, a lot of times people don't count that when they talk about what they do. They often don't count, the glass or two of wine or something like that. And we had a big discussion about the just a bite snacks. Sometimes our spouses or partners, know that we can't eat a lot, but they just give us a little bit here and there, here and there. When you actually document and do a food diary of everything that goes in your mouth, and then you look at the calories, sometimes you find out, oh my goodness, I'm eating 400 or 500 calories more than I thought I was. And so they're not losing weight because they're kind of overeating. And then that one we can help with, and that might be a case of where moving up in medication is helpful. The fifth reason, and this is kind of common as well, I should probably move this up to the second, is people just not getting enough water. If you're not drinking enough water, you're not flushing out the fat, and you're probably a bit constipated. Constipation can, mask a number of pounds of real weight loss. And the last one is just sleep and stress. Sleep plays a much bigger role in weight loss than people give it credit for. And if you're not getting a good 6 hours, or if you're going through set of life changes and you're in a really stressful situation, your hormones and stuff like that can really affect your metabolism. And so, getting stress under control, relaxing, meditation, things like that can really help, but also getting sleep is really important. We call it the dosage trap. There we go. Usually when people's weight loss starts to slow down or stop, their number one reaction is, give me more medicine, give me more medicine. We like to go through a couple of check-ins, because especially if it's the number one reason that we see that people are under eating, giving them more medicine is not going to solve the problem. It's actually going to make it worse. So to get the scale moving again, step one, we do the calorie check. We track food honestly for three days minimum. We'd like to see it for a week, like we did with that other patient. If you're not able to do it on an app, the two apps that we see patients use the most is MyFitnessPal or Carb Manager to track your foods. Just write it down as detailed as you can. Give it to us. We will figure it out for you. That's something that we do for you. Very few other places would go through the hassle of that, but we have a team of medical assistants. They're licensed, they're experienced in being able to figure this out. We want to help you. You dial in the 4 fundamentals. We talk about this at the consult, but the 4 things that we want patients to do is, get plenty of water. That's extra B. The goal is half your weight in ounces. For some people, that means, 100 plus ounces is really hard. We say at a minimum, try to get 64 to 80 at a minimum. The second thing is, eat at least 100 grams of protein a day. The third thing is, have some sort of activity. It doesn't have to be strength training. You don't have to be, Arnold Schwarzenegger lifting weights in the gym. But, you could be on the couch with a couple pound, dumbbell, and as a commercial comes on, just lift a few. Or get some stretchy bands, and you can just, do your knees or your legs or something. And the last thing is just making sure you're having daily bowel movements. Once we've checked your calories, once we've dialed in the fundamentals, and we're still multiple weeks into a stall, then we talk about dosage changes. It's not the first thing that we jump to. And so here's kind of a checklist that you can answer for. If you're not able to answer yes to the first 4, giving yourself more medication is not going to solve the problem. And so that's kind of the process that we go through. It's been very successful in getting people to break their stalls, but bubbles hiding in here. But plateaus or stalls are normal. They're solvable. They're part of the process. Everybody wants to see their weight come down a nice even pattern, week after week after week. But in reality, it kind of does this. So, don't be surprised in that situation. After that, we just had kind of open conversation. So a lot of good discussions. This is where some of the real value of the group support meetings come in. It's patients talking to and helping out other patients. And so if you get a chance, May will be our next group support meeting. It will be in Puyallup, and we hope to see you there. So thank you.